This is my October 2024 fish room tour and let's get into it. Starting with my 40-gallon community tank, and my Corydoras and Harlequin Rasboras are still spawning. The eggs on the glass are from the Corydoras, but I have noticed the Harlequins laying their eggs under the plant leaves throughout the month. My Siamese Algae Eater has become quite skilled at going around the tank and eating their eggs, but it has ripped a few of the lotus leaves when getting the Harlequin eggs off them. Meanwhile, the neon and cardinal tetras are still hiding amongst the plants in the back of the tank. I'm actually considering setting up a dedicated neon tetra tank next year if they don't start swimming in the open again, as something does seem to be wrong with them in this tank. The honey gourami have just been going about their business as usual, and I am thinking about creating a dedicated ecosystem tank for them next year. The plan is to set up a Walstad method tank filled with plants, scuds, shrimp, snails and other small creatures, with the honey gourami being the top predator at the top of the food chain in the system. Moving on to my 12-gallon tank, and I know that this looks really rough right now, but it's just finished its cycling period about a week ago, so there's a lot of algae in here. Unfortunately, the Anubias struggled with the high ammonia levels during the cycle, and they are currently having some issues and they are melting, but I hope they bounce back over the coming months. This is the home of my gold white cloud mountain minnows, and these guys are an excellent fish, and I know everyone says that they're underrated, and I didn't believe it till I got them, but they are so active. These fish just don't stop. They are constantly swimming, breeding, searching for food and maintaining their hierarchy, with the males sparring each other, and they are so fun to watch as there's always something happening in this tank. I'm also testing out ram's horn snails for the first time as part of my algae eating cleanup crew as an experiment for the honey gourami ecosystem project. I know that they can breed a lot, but one of my neighbours keeps backyard chickens and he's happy to take any excess snails off my hands for food for the chickens in exchange for him giving me some fresh eggs. There's also 10 yellow Neocaridina shrimp in here and a couple of Armano shrimp, helping to get rid of the algae as fast as possible. I aimed for a jungle style aquascape with this tank, but with its smaller size my options were limited, but I am looking forward to seeing it without any algae and with the Anubias fully healed and grown in. Moving over to my 8-gallon Betta tank, which completed its cycle a few weeks back, and I recently added my new Betta fish Marmalade. Some of my regular viewers may remember that I originally set this tank up for another Betta fish, Cooley, but sadly both of my other Betta fish passed away this last month. Cooley began having seizures that quickly took their toll, and Stitch unfortunately lost his battle with tail rot. I just want to do a quick shout out to plenty of Bettas and everyone else who offered advice on how to treat the tail rot, but it does seem like it was a particularly strong bacterial infection, as usual treatments that I've successfully used with other fish just made no dent in it. On a brighter note, Marmalade is settling into her new home and showing a lot of personality, and she is so fun to watch. Similar to my 12-gallon tank, the Anubias in here also melted during the cycling process, so I've adjusted how I cycle my tanks in the future, but more on that later. Thankfully the other plants in here are doing well, but Marmalade does love rooting through the Monte Carlo carpet, uprooting it while searching for food, so I do have to keep putting it back into the soil. There's also 2 blue ram's horn snails in here and a couple of yellow Neocaridina too to help get the algae under control that's on some of the plants. Marmalade didn't like them at first, but she has started to warm up to the snails and shrimp over the last day or two, so hopefully she'll be fine. Moving on to my Walstad cherry shrimp tank, and I added 2 platinum Medaka this month and they seem to have settled in nicely. These little guys were curious about the shrimp at first, but I've seen them get really close to tiny little baby shrimp without eating them, so I am confident both species can be kept together without issue. This tank is incredibly low maintenance and the shrimp are breeding consistently, and the new Medaka have slightly increased the bio load of the tank, which helps boost the plant growth too. I did add a small hanging back filter to provide some mechanical filtration for this tank, as the mulberry leaves and shrimp snowflake food that I feed the shrimp release a lot of debris into the water column, and I wanted an easy way to remove it because it was starting to annoy me. This tank is around 6 months old now, and I've lost count on how many shrimp have been bred in this tank. There's also at least 1 buried female in here, so the shrimp population will increase again within the next couple of weeks. This is my Bloody Mary shrimp tank, which has essentially turned into a pearlweed jungle. I did recently remove around a third of the pearlweed to open up some of the space, as it was a nightmare to actually see the shrimp in here. I was considering rescaping this tank completely, but I actually really like the way that it looks with the pearlweed trimmed down to this level, so I'm probably going to leave it as it is. The Bloody Mary shrimp have been breeding, and this is the first batch of Bloody Mary baby shrimp that I've ever had, so I'm really happy with how this tank's progressing. It's hard to see with there being so much pearlweed in here, but I think I saw another buried female a couple of days ago, so hopefully I'll get another batch of babies within a week or two. As for the mystery fry, whose egg hitched a ride into this tank on a floating plant, it's actually grown out a bit more, and I'm pretty sure that it's a baby Harlequin Rasbora. I'm going to move it over to my 40-gallon tank over the coming days because it's large enough to grow out safely over there without being eaten by the tank mates, and it's a tropical fish, and the current tank it's in is cold water. This is my orange Neocaridina shrimp tank, and while the limner filler definitely needs trimming, everything else in here is finally going well and I'm happy with it. A few months back I realised that all of the shrimp in the tank were female, but after adding a second batch of shrimp it does seem that there's at least one male in there now. I recently spotted 2 buried females, so I'm expecting baby shrimp to arrive any week now, so that means all of my shrimp colonies are now breeding. This is another tank that I was considering rescaping, but with the monoselenium and limner filler continuing to grow out, I'm really starting to like the way this one looks as well, so I'm probably keeping it as it is. This is my yellow Neocaridina shrimp tank, and this one is definitely getting rescaped. I originally set this one up as a test tank for Eliocaris, but the plants haven't really taken off, but the shrimp are absolutely thriving and breeding like crazy. I've already moved 10 of these shrimp over to my 12-gallon and 6 of them into my 8-gallon, but the population is still continuing to grow. I'm pretty sure that these yellow Neocaridina are my current largest shrimp colony at the moment, and I did see 3 buried females at the same time in here a couple of days ago, so there's more babies on the way. There are a lot of low grade yellow shrimp in here now, so I might need to scoop some of them out and move them over to my 40-gallon as a catch-all just to get them out of the breeding line. Other than that though, I'm really happy with how the actual shrimp in here are coming along, but I definitely want to upgrade them to a better looking tank. Moving on to my Walstad Shrimp Jar, where the shrimp have been breeding like crazy recently. I posted a dedicated video about this jar a couple of weeks ago, as there's so much misinformation out there about keeping shrimp jars. Don't pay any attention to the negative comments you see on social media or Reddit about this type of setup from people who've probably never even tried it. If you set the jar up correctly, like in the setup video on my channel that I link in the description, and maintain stable water parameters including temperature, this is a cheap and easy way to start breeding Neocaridina shrimp. I was thinking about rescaping this jar too, but with the shrimp population booming, I've decided to keep it as it is for at least 1 year. I want to quickly mention my other tanks as well. Although Stitch has passed on, I am keeping his Betta tank active and up and running, but at this point it is just to keep the plants, shrimps and snails in there alive until I can move them onto other tanks. My current plan is to transfer the lava rock and all of these epiphyte plants into a 25-litre tank with black gravel and some white snowball shrimp, so there'll be a nice contrast in that setup. The shrimp and snails that are currently in here will be relocated to one of my other tanks, and I'm probably going to rescape this aquarium next year as another Betta fish tank. I'm currently cycling this shrimp breeding tub as well, but I haven't decided if I want to breed high quality cherry shrimp or Bloody Mary shrimp in it yet. It's been a right hassle for me to try and catch the low grade shrimp from my existing tank, so having a dedicated setup like this should make it as easy as possible to breed high grade shrimp for future tanks. This setup is actually really cheap and easy, and in theory it should work perfectly, so I'm curious how it turns out. I am documenting the entire process every single week for a future video, so watch this space. I'm currently using the dark start method to cycle my 29-gallon tank, a 7-gallon tank and my second and third shrimp jars. The dark start method allows me to cycle the tanks with an ammonia solution before introducing any livestock or plants, which should help prevent the issues I had with the Anubias and in vitro plants melting in the 12 and 8-gallon tanks. The 29-gallon tank will serve as a catch-all for any Medaka that don't meet the breeding standards in my future projects. My duo colour marble Medaka eggs that I got a few weeks back are doing really well, and the fry are active and ready to be moved onto their tanks once it's ready. I also picked up a batch of orange Medaka eggs a week ago which have started to hatch recently, so I'm curious if these guys do as well as the marble Medakas. I am considering a clown killifish for this 7-gallon setup, but it might be hard to find one locally, so it could end up being another shrimp and Medaka tank. The 2 shrimp jars are my attempts at creating aquascape shrimp jars, so we'll see how they turn out over time, but it should be a fun little project. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end. Thanks for watching and have a good day.